It started on a quiet Saturday morning when I was sipping coffee on my back porch, looking out over the land I had worked so hard to build into a sanctuary. The air was still, the smell of pine filled the air, and for once, life felt peaceful. At least until the letter showed up in my mailbox, a letter that would drag me into a war with the Homeowners Association. A war I never asked for, but one I was determined to finish. The letter was neatly typed, formal, and dripping with arrogance. The HOA demanded that I cease and desist construction of my new workshop, claiming it was in violation of their community guidelines. The problem? I wasn't even part of their HOA. My property sat just outside their jurisdiction, bought decades before the subdivision was even dreamed up. I owned my land outright, free and clear, and yet here they were, demanding I comply with their rules. At first I laughed it off. Surely this was just some mistake. Maybe their inspector got turned around. Maybe someone in the HOA office mixed up property lines. But within a week, I found out it was no mistake at all. They had deliberately extended their so-called authority onto my property, emboldened by years of bullying weaker neighbors into submission. They weren't going to back off. The first confrontation, the first time their inspector showed up, he strutted onto my land without so much as a knock on the door. Clipboard in hand, reflective vest on, he looked more like a mall cop than an authority figure. "You're in violation of HOA guidelines," he barked, as if that was supposed to scare me. "This workshop is not approved. You'll need to halt construction immediately, or we'll pursue fines and legal action." I set my coffee down slowly, walked over, and gave him my best smile. "Buddy, you're standing on private property? My private property? I'm not in your HOA, and your guidelines mean nothing to me." He blinked, thrown off by my calmness. "That's not how this works. All properties in this area fall under HOA jurisdiction." "Wrong again," I said, handing him a copy of my deed, which I always kept handy after hearing stories about this HOA pulling similar stunts. "This land was bought before your subdivision even existed. Now, I suggest you leave before I call the sheriff and report you for trespassing." The man turned red, mumbled something about legal consequences, and stomped off. I figured. That was the end of it. Oh, how wrong I was. The escalation, 2 weeks later, I came home from work to find not one, but 3 cars parked along the edge of my driveway, 2 belonging to the HOA, and 1 that belonged to a local law firm. Standing at the edge of my workshop were the same inspector, a woman in a blazer clutching a briefcase, and 2 men who looked like they'd walked straight out of a corporate boardroom. The woman introduced herself as the HOA's legal representative and immediately launched into threats. "You are in direct violation of HOA property development codes. You have ignored prior warnings. If you do not demolish this structure immediately, we will file suit for non-compliance and recover damages." I laughed in her face. "You can. File whatever paperwork you want, but I'll tell you right now, it's going to be laughed out of court. I don't answer to your HOA. I never signed your covenants. You have no authority here." Her smile was smug, rehearsed. "We've dealt with stubborn homeowners before. Judges side with us 9 times out of 10. Bully, threaten, and hope the average person couldn't afford to fight back. Unfortunately for them, I wasn't average. I had the law on my side, and I had the time, money, and determination to fight them to the bitter end, building my case the next morning. I called my attorney, an old college buddy who had gone into property law. When I told him what happened, he laughed so hard he nearly dropped the phone. "Are you kidding me? They're trying that on you? This'll be the easiest case I've ever handled. They don't have a leg to stand on." Over the next few weeks, we gathered every piece of documentation we could, my deed. Survey maps, county records, and even archive documents proving that my land had never, at any point, been under HOA jurisdiction. I wasn't just going to win, I was going to crush them in court so badly they'd think twice before harassing another homeowner again. The court date the day finally came. The courthouse was packed, mostly with bored onlookers and a handful of other homeowners who'd been following my battle closely. Some even whispered encouragement as I walked in, saying they'd always wanted to fight back, but never had the courage. The HOA's legal team strutted in confidently, dressed in sharp suits, their inspector in tow. They acted like the verdict was already theirs. Their lead attorney started strong, throwing around phrases like community integrity and binding covenants. They painted me as a reckless homeowner, defying the rules everyone else had to follow. When it was our turn, my attorney stood up calmly, handed the judge a neatly organized binder, and said, "Your Honor, my client is not a member of the HOA. He never signed their agreements. His land predates the HOA's existence. What they are doing is not enforcement of rules, it is trespassing, harassment, and attempted extortion." The judge flipped through the documents, his expression hardening with every page. Finally, he set the binder down and looked directly at the HOA's attorney's counselor. He said, his voice sharp, "You have wasted this court's time. This homeowner is not under your jurisdiction. Your so-called claims are invalid. If you continue to harass him, you will face sanctions." The room went silent. The HOA attorneys looked like they'd been slapped. Their inspectors stared at the floor, avoiding eye contact. And just like that, their entire case crumbled. Sweet justice, but the judge wasn't finished. He turned back to me. "Sir, would you like to pursue damages for their harassment?" You bet I did. With my attorney's guidance, we filed for legal fees, emotional distress, and even punitive damages. In the end, the HOA not only had to pay my attorney's costs, but they were also fined for abusing the court system. Word spread quickly through the community. The once feared HOA now had egg on its face. Their reputation was shattered, their arrogance deflated, and their members furious at the wasted money. Neighbors who had once cowered under their threats began pushing back. Emboldened by my victory, the aftermath in the weeks that followed, I received countless messages from homeowners thanking me for standing up to the HOA. Some shared their own horror stories, being fined for the color of their curtains, forced to remove vegetable gardens, even threatened with foreclosure over trivial landscaping issues. The HOA's power was crumbling. People were banding together, questioning every decision, demanding accountability. Their board members, once untouchable, were now facing recall votes and community outrage. As for me, I finished my workshop. Every nail, every beam, every coat of paint was a reminder that I had stood my ground and won. When I flipped on the lights for the first time, I couldn't help but smile. The HOA had tried to tear me down, but all they did was make me stronger. Reflection: looking back, I realized this battle wasn't just about a workshop. It was about standing up to bullies. It's about refusing to be intimidated by people who think power and money put them above the law. The HOA sent inspectors and lawyers to threaten me, but in the end, they walked out of that courtroom humiliated. Their arrogance shattered, and if there's one thing I learned from all this, it's that the only way to stop a bully is to fight back harder than they ever expected. Asterisk, this story is just the beginning. There is so much more ahead. Subscribe to the channel to join me on this journey.